you have to ask yourself, every single time that somebody screams states' rights, what are they actually trying to say states' rights to? It's probably going to be a good idea to start with what just happened at the Supreme Court. There's a lot to talk about. But as always, we'll get a short palate cleanser, and then we'll get into the actual topic itself. So, first of all, fan art. We have a piece from Lexi the Mistress. Said, hey y'all, I've been MIA, but I'm alive, and here's some fan art. And it is honestly very, very, very... What is the first word for it? This is a Suris trying to tempt someone, and there's no way around that. But it looks great. The next one we have is from Kubi. Said, enjoy a simple hoodie Suris with extra ear fluff on those danglers that hoodies have. I actually don't know what you would call those. Are they danglers? Like shoelaces that you use to tighten things. Or elastic bands. Pom-poms? I guess those ones are poms. Pom-poms. There we go. Drawstrings? Hey, there we go. That's probably what they are. But no, this piece looks absolutely stellar. Thank you very much for that one, QB. The last one we have is from Mega Choco Maniac. Betrayal of the Slime Suris with and without coat. And one with coat shaded. Out of curiosity, what would you prefer? One nuke on a single video, or 4 ones given at random points? I prefer to alivened. That's my thought there. That's where I'm at when that happens. Probably doesn't help. It doesn't help answer your question. But I think I'm safe not doing that. With that said, though, as always, everybody, thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future episode, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, I could just show this, and that would be enough. I wouldn't have to actually, like, go into anything looking at that. But we do need to cover it. So, here we go. Anywho, let's go ahead and read. The title of this is The Supreme Court Guts Lifeline for Prisoners Who Claim Wrongful Convictions. The decision bars federal courts from hearing new evidence not presented in a state court as a result of ineffective legal counsel. So, if evidence is not presented in the court case that gets you convicted, and there is new evidence that comes to light, and it is not brought up because you have an ineffective lawyer, none of that can be used to save your ass, is what that reads to me. We're going to get into more detail, obviously, but that's how that reads to me. Anyway, Rovelin, thank you for dropping 50,001 channel points and making my life a living hell. Ooh, woo. Ooh, woo. Let's go ahead and take a look here. We're gonna talk about this a little before getting into details. Who does this actually affect? Who is most likely to have ineffective legal counsel? Somebody who can't afford a private lawyer. Somebody who has to rely on a public defendant. Anybody who is poor. Yes, people of color have a higher likelihood of being poor in the United States, but just in general, people who are poor. Anybody with a public defender. Anybody who is more likely to have ineffective legal counsel is somebody who has to rely on a public defender, which means anybody who is poor. This is a ruling that directly targets the impoverished. But let's go ahead and look at the details of this and see what there is to say. The U.S. Supreme Court on Monday gutted constitutional protections that for years have provided a federal lifeline to innocent prisoners facing prolonged incarceration or even execution following wrongful convictions, stemming from poor legal counsel given to them by the states. In a 6-3 ruling, the newly dominant right-wing majority of the nation's highest court barred federal courts from hearing new evidence that was not previously presented in a state court as a result of the defendant's ineffective legal representation. Can I make a comparison here for a moment, please? Let's assume for a sec that you were a court being presented with new cases and evidence with which to change a decision on a 50-year-old ruling, a precedent that had been set in a court that was set in a Republican majority under the Nixon administration, and you were being asked to reevaluate based on new evidence And you decided that you would actually do that. That's a thing you're actually going to do. But then, when it comes to seeing if other random Joe Schmoes on the street can have their cases reviewed the same way, using the same tools, you're like, nah, fuck them. Who cares about them? They're not Supreme Court justices with special rules applied to them. So it's weird that they can make, you know, dumb fuck decisions on stuff like Roe v. Wade and leaked documents, but when it comes to stuff like this, oh no. The rules are different for us. Let's go ahead and continue. The decision means that prisoners will no longer have recourse to federal judges, even when they claim they were wrongfully convicted because their lawyers failed to conduct their cases properly. The decision eviscerated the Supreme Court's own precedent in a move that 3 liberal justices call illogical and perverse. In a dissenting opinion, Justice Sonia Sotomayor slammed the decision, warning that it would leave many people to face incarceration or even execution without any meaningful chance to vindicate their right to counsel. The ruling in Shin versus Ramirez was written by Clarence Thomas, the right-wing justice who has come to the fore as a result of the court's sharp shift to the right following Donald Trump's 3 appointments. He was supported by all 5 other conservative justices, including the Chief Justice John Roberts. In his opinion, Thomas presented a case as one of, and here, say the line, Bart, as one of states' rights. He said the federal courts should not be allowed to override the state's core power to enforce criminal law. How often do we go back to this? I'm just curious, how often do we go back to this exact fucking thing? States' rights. States' rights. States' rights. Why? Who the fuck cares about states' rights? I'm just straight up. If a thing is moral, if a thing is good, why does geography fucking change that? I've ceased giving a shit. Oh, well, it's just, we just have different values here. Why does that fucking matter? If a thing is moral, if a thing is right, why do geographical borders change that? You have to make the argument as to why an individual thing should have different rulings based on cultural preferences. Because states doesn't have anything left? Boy, howdy, I just don't care. I see that as a non-issue. I see that as shit I just don't care about. In his opinion, we already went through that, that continues to be the case. The majority ruled even when defendants are given bad legal advice by counsel provided for them by the very same states that are condemning them to long prison sentences or execution. Oh yeah, that's a thing. So your legal counsel, when you're getting a public defender, is appointed by the state. So now you can't have the government above the state actually help you. Your federal government can't do shit here based on this decision. Oh boy, howdy. My favorite. What is this about? I missed the part of the topic. This is about the federal court removing a precedent that originally was set that says that if new evidence comes to light that could change the ruling on your case, you can actually make a federal appeal, or you could make a federal appeal to have that new evidence evaluated in a federal court of law. You can't do that anymore. Now the rules are, if you're fucked, you're fucked. And the rules specifically are set up so that if you were not given that, like during discovery or anything like that, because of bad advice or bad legal counsel, you can't go and make a federal appeal for any of that to fix your situation. You used to be able to, but you can't now. And you can't now because something states' rights. And by the way, the people who are more likely to need a public defender are people who cannot afford a private lawyer. So guess what? This only affects people who are poor. This almost unilaterally just affects people who are poor. Boy, my favorite. So the case before the justices arose after state officials in Arizona petitioned the Supreme Court to prevent 2 of the state's death row inmates, one with a strong case of proclaimed innocence and the other with a history of family abuse, from seeking relief in a federal court from capital punishment. Oh boy! It's people who are fetishizing the death penalty. That's all it fucking is. So also, public defenders have so many cases that they're not able to adequately defend every client. Yep. Basically, Arizona wants to legally murder 2 people, one of whom might be innocent. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So we'll have to rely on Democrats to fix this, which will take like 50 years, or just won't happen. But let's go ahead and continue on. The state argued that the condemned men should not be allowed to present new evidence to a federal judge when they had failed to do so previously in a state court. Lawyers for the condemned men pointed out that they had only failed to present the evidence in state courts because the legal counsel they had been assigned by the state was woefully inadequate. If they were blocked from petitioning a federal court, the men would in effect be sent to the death chamber, specifically because incompetent lawyers had missed a filing deadline or failed to uncover a glaring truth. So it's not about justice anymore. It's not about what actually exists in reality, whether somebody is innocent. It's about the state having power over people's lives. I'm just gonna throw something out there, just a quick question. At what point do we give the state the ability to execute the populace and not give the populace an identical ability to defend itself? Why do we remove abilities for the populace to defend themselves from powers of the state? Why? Why would you do that? Yeah, no, the states already have the ability to execute. It's called having a police force, but I understand that. Bear in mind, police forces in other countries tend to have lower lethality rates than ours. Not a Black Sheep says, clearly the problem isn't the innocent people that are facing misjustice. It's the criminals are getting out of jail. Monday's majority ruling prompted an outpouring of angry and anguished criticism from innocence rights groups and death penalty experts. The Innocence Project said that overturning wrongful convictions was never easy, and that today's Supreme Court decision makes it that much harder to secure justice for wrongly convicted people. Thomas's opinion also overturns previous Supreme Court rulings in an abrogation of the court's own adherence to the principle of stare decisis, that is, being faithful to precedent. In 2012, the Supreme Court ruled in Martinez versus Ryan that prisoners could have access to a federal court in cases where they had suffered from ineffective legal counsel in the state's courts. The Supreme Court seems hell-bent on disrespecting precedent and rolling back rights, said Jania Nelson, president of LDF, America's first civil rights and human rights law organization. So, in layman's terms, the quick and dirty of that is that if you have ineffective legal counsel provided by your state, you cannot, per this decision, you cannot then go get that case redone at a federal level if it is due to the inability of a state-appointed lawyer. If you get fucked over because the state cannot provide you with adequate legal counsel, you cannot go above that chain of command, basically. This is the type of behavior that happens when an angry McDonald's manager is called out on their bullshit. Elite says, Sirs, you can have competent legal counsel and the state can hide evidence due to this. I'm not 100% certain on that. That could be the case. I'm not 100% certain. Supreme Court is just giving itself less work. In her dissenting opinion, Sotomayor decried the ruling, says this decision is perverse and illogical. Sotomayor argued that under the court's own precedent, prisoners cannot be held accountable and effectively punished for their attorneys' failures to present claims in a state court. She concluded that as a result of the majority decision from the 9-member Supreme Court bench, the Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution's guarantee that criminal defendants have the right to effective legal counsel at trial is now an empty one. In future, she said, prisoners will have poor legal assistance and will have no relief. The responsibility for this devastating outcome lies not with Congress, but with this court. Are we really surprised at this point? Human rights in the United States are being eroded bit by bit, and it's typically, almost unilaterally, being thrown at people who are disadvantaged in one way, shape, or another. Somebody who's from a gendered minority, somebody who is from a racial minority, or in this case, just people who are fucking poor and can't afford good legal counsel, and they have to rely on state-appointed legal counsel. Now, what tends to happen in a situation like this is you point out logically that this is a rollback on human rights within a country. That's what is effectively happening. And then somebody, some smartass, as I'm sure somebody in the comment section will do, will come in and say, no, actually, no rights have been taken away. Just some of the rules have been shifted around a little bit. And while that statement is technically correct, that's not the best kind of correct. What that statement really says is that you don't understand the difference between the consequences of an action and what you're reading on paper. On paper, sure, all that's happened is that more responsibilities have fallen onto the state to appoint better effective legal counsel. But in reality, where we actually live, that's not going to happen. The inability for state-appointed legal counsel to adequately serve the needs of people who need them is going to continue in the exact same fashion as it always has. All that's going to happen is that one of the few legal protections that innocent people have when the deck is stacked against them has now effectively been removed. I mean, hell, Arizona is pushing this specifically because they have 2 people on the death row that they want to push through, despite there being evidence that one of them might actually be innocent. Now, again, I have to ask the logical question. At what point do you just stop accepting that rights are being yanked away from you? Like, what's the margin there? Where's the point where you start going, hey, fucking stop? Because we can yell and scream and be angry about it all we want, but that's not going to change anything. We get mad on social media. We can ask people for their thoughts and prayers. That doesn't do jack shit. And when this basically all gets rolled back into a nice aluminum ball that's polished up to look like something that seems like it's not made of a bunch of tinfoil, and everything gets rolled over to states' rights, you have to ask yourself, every single time that somebody screams states' rights, what are they actually trying to say states' rights to? We had this conversation with the Civil War, where people have tried to argue that it's a war about states' rights. It's definitely a war about states' rights. But it was the states' rights to own people, specifically. Those were the rights that were being talked about. The states' rights argument is always a way to kick the can away from the actual problem. So if somebody tries to come in and look at this and say this is just a problem with states' rights, this is a conversation about states' rights. Okay, well, states' rights to what? States' rights to fuck over poor and impoverished people and get them into the for-profit prison security complex. That's what that is. That's effectively what it is. Because guess what? When you're a convicted felon, it's a lot harder to vote. Our country puts massive barriers once that happens. On top of that, you should maybe look at the 13th Amendment. It's a useful little conversation piece. The idea that we're not technically a country that has slavery, but if you are imprisoned, which more people will stay in prison because of decisions like this, they can become free labor. And when they can become free labor, well, you then have to ask yourself, did we really ever actually abolish slavery? Or did we tuck it under a rug where people didn't have to see it, and we had better justifications for the people that were enslaved? Welcome to America. It's all fucked here. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. There's a lot to talk about here, unfortunately. And I'm curious what all the fallout's going to be of a decision like this, though I think we have a pretty good prediction already. So with that said, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. If you enjoyed, insofar as you were even able to, let me know there as well. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here.